And there were some young people. Yeah, okay, thank you. Good. Let's get started. Let's have prayer. Let's do that first. Heavenly Father, we don't dare talk about anything that relates to the Bible and creation without asking your presence. We want your Spirit to fill me, to make my words your words. Bless those that have come. May we all learn and enjoy this evening as we close this Sabbath day, we pray. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, is there any way that I can get those two front lights off? Is that a possibility, or do they all go off together? Are they in the same bank? Oh, that's awesome. Thank you, guys. Okay, take a look at that picture. This is going to cause you to think a little bit. This is called the Deep Space Picture from the Hubble Space Telescope. This was purposely selected for this area so they could look farther and deeper into space. Take a look at that. That is a star. See that down there? That is a star. Everything else you see in that picture is a galaxy. A galaxy. Take a look at that. And contemplate life for a moment and how you are in the picture. This kind of blows my mind a little bit. I don't know about you. But that picture, I had the computer screen, it'd really be sharp. That's pretty good. But in that picture are 10,000 galaxies. Each galaxy has on average 200 billion stars. Okay. And very interesting discovery was made lately. Incidentally, that is looking at an area about this big, about the size of a pea. So you hold that up that way, that way, that way, that way, that way, that way. That's what you're looking at in terms of density. Okay, now, here's the thing. The University of Nottingham in England, the astronomy people there, thought for a moment, somebody there took it upon themselves, I don't think the number is correct for the currently accepted number of galaxies in the universe, which was 200 billion galaxies. He says, we're going to do some research and recheck this. They did it. They announced their findings. Not 200 billion. Add a zero. 2 trillion galaxies. No, in the whole universe is the calculation. So 2 trillion times 200 billion is 400 septillion stars. Okay, as soon as that was announced on the internet, a mathematician said this, I know what's going to happen next, I know what the question's going to be, I'm on it. He did the calculation of how many grain particles of sand there is on every beach on planet Earth. I don't know how he did it, he figured out how many miles, how much there is in a cubic whatever, and he came to the following announcement. There are more stars in the heavens than the grains of sand on every beach of planet Earth. And Scripture says, what about stars? He calls them all out, he counts them, he knows their names, he calls them by name. Now, how big is God? He's got to be bigger than what he made. Wow. Okay. Now, having said all that, if you ever think of yourself as pretty important hot stuff. Now, what I have not heard from an evolutionist yet, which I consider to be probably about the best question to ask, is where in the world you guys think that a creator that could create all that would in any way care about us as specks on a speck among specks? And let alone die, send his son to die for you? That is as mind-boggling as any of these pictures would be. Okay, having said that, let's bring it down to earth. Let's talk about some lizards. Don't look at me when I'm talking about lizards. Come on. Let's talk about dragons and dinosaurs. The Bible talks about dragons, doesn't it? So the great dragon was cast out, that serpent of old called the devil and Satan, who does what? Deceives the whole world. Now when you think of the word dragon, what's the mental image that comes up? Red and pointy and fire breathing and all that kind of stuff? Something like this? Okay, now there's a dragon, right? Well, guess what? That's a medieval view of dragons. That's not a very old image. That's only a few hundred years old. If you go back to the time of Revelation, and John is writing a book using the word dracon, he's simply thinking large lizard, large reptile. That's all that means, without the fire breathing and the pointy and the red and all that. That's important because I want you to remember that by the end of our talk. Dragon means large reptile. Okay, let's keep going. So, I'm going to give you a modern history of dinosaurs, and I like that subtitle so well I gave myself a little smiley face. That was a modern history. That's pretty cool. Okay, anyway, so let's go. Here we go. This guy, that's a dude, kids. Don't you want to be a scientist? Okay, that's Robert Plot, who's the head of the chemistry department at Oxford University, 1600s. He was the first one, found a bone, wrote about it. This bone was found in England, wrote about it, and he was not clear that it was a dinosaur bone because they didn't know about dinosaurs. He thought it was from a different animal. What did he think it was from? This is England, 1600s. Not a lizard. What do you think he thought? A cow? It's big. It's very similar to this bone right here. This is a dinosaur bone. Very similar in size and shape to this. End of a leg bone. No, not a dragon. This is a scientist that wouldn't dare think that there was such a. What do you think? Large chicken? Sir, I want you to talk. You come up and do it. You're more funny than me. This is actually, he thought it was from an elephant, Roman era elephant. But actually, as we study the bone and get a little bit of an idea where it's from, we know it was a dinosaur. Now, this guy was a pastor in Connecticut. And he had a church in the town there, a little town. And while he was going along the side of the road there, he noticed that in the rock itself, right by the road, there were footprints, large footprints. Well, kind of big footprints. And he thought there, sometime in ancient days, and here's from the same basic deposit, says a footprint that he thought represented some kind of an ostrich thing that must live in Connecticut. Again, he didn't know. And what he was looking at was a dinosaur footprint. Okay, keep going. In England, they found a tooth. It was a doctor and his wife were doing this. They found some bones and a tooth. They showed the tooth to their friends, their science-oriented friends. Can you tell us what this tooth is from? Finally, somebody said, well, I'll tell you what it looks like, but it can't be that. Well, what does it look like? Well, it looks like a little iguana tooth from a lizard, but problem is, it's 20 times too big. So, from that began the discovery, when they found more bones, of an iguana tooth animal. And the first pictures of what eventually would be understood to be a dinosaur is this. So that's kind of funny looking. First rendering of a dinosaur. Now, they found more bones, and now they think more like that. But anyway. So, I like to point out to secular groups when I get the chance that the person that came up with the dinosaur name was actually a Christian, and he was a scientist, and if you'd never heard of Charles Darwin, this would have been the most famous English scientist of the 19th century. This was Richard Owen, and he set up the British Museum. Anyway, he was an anatomist by specialty, and he came up with the word Dinosaurus, which means awesome lizard. So anyway, so that was the name that he came up with, Dinosauria, or dinosaur for short. Now, but this is the most famous event, as far as I'm concerned, in the discovery of dinosaurs. Remember, up to this point, nobody had any idea of dinosaurs. You go to museums today, they're all over the place. But in the mid-1800s, they didn't know about dinosaurs, but they were finding bones. Dr. Joseph Leidy was a scientist. He had an institute, like a museum, a science museum, in downtown Philadelphia in the mid-1800s. He heard about a woman over in New Jersey, across the border, who had big bones being found in her backyard. He asked her, can I dig them up and put them in my museum? Sure. He did that. He put them together, and they looked like that. And he called them a hadrosaur. It did not have a skull. He had to fake one out of paper mache, put it on top, called it a hadrosaur. Folks, first dinosaur on display in the world. This was America. He figured out he could sell tickets. So people paid and came from miles to see this critter. The line went down the street around the corner. This being America, other museums noticed and said, well, we got to have these big bones too and sell tickets. So suddenly there was a mad rush in the mid to late 1800s of dinosaur hunters going out and digging up bones in Montana and Wyoming and Colorado. And within just a few years, they were starting to get out, and people were being introduced to the whole concept of giant animals living in the past. Now, what did creationists say when an evolutionist or somebody who's a cynic against the Bible would say, hey, where are these things in the Bible, huh? Where do you get these big animals in Genesis? Huh? And we had two basic responses at the beginning. Number one was like this. I don't know. And number two was, I think the devil made those bones and put them in the ground to confuse us. Seriously, we didn't have a very reasoned, science-oriented approach. Not at first. We got much better at it now. But anyway, that's basically the way it was. We're going to talk about the fairly unique Adventist view of this, so hang on. I'm sure you've got questions. So meanwhile, in Europe, they're finding more iguanodon bones, and they're putting them on display. This is in Belgium. American dinosaur bones are on tour, going through the big museums. For instance, that's in the Louvre, about 1900. And that's a big Brachiosaurus on display there. Okay, so for a while, of course, we got to have one in the Smithsonian. The National Museum must have the best. So we got a really fine display in 1905, put it on display, and called it the Brontosaurus. So people came from all around the world, they saw this, and they said, this is a magnificent specimen. Are you sure about the head? Turns out they had the wrong head on that dinosaur. So it was really from two dinosaurs, and they put an Apatosaurus head on a Camarasaurus body and called it a new name, Brontosaurus. So that means thunder lizard. To this day, if you want to get into an interesting discussion with a dinosaur nerd, and there are a lot of them out there, ask them this thoughtful question. Do you believe there is such a thing as a Brontosaurus? They will have an opinion on that. Okay, anyway, so eventually they fixed it, but it was a little bit of embarrassing in the National Museum. Okay, so this is the picture that they had in the museum at the time this was put on display. And so when people came into the museum, they are introduced to this whole ancient world. They tried to imagine, well, what would it have been like? My goodness, these giant animals, it was a very visual experience. This is before television and movies and everything. They see this, and it was changing to many people. An experience, let's put it that way. Well, incidentally, there are the heads. It should have had that head. It had that head instead. Okay, moving on. Camarasaurus, big guys. This is the Camarasaurus leg bone. Oops. Okay, that was a Camarasaurus leg bone before it got knocked over the butt and broken. That's interesting because for years I had a Camarasaurus fibula, which I thought was the biggest bone at least I could hand around. That's me holding it. And that's from a subadult. You know what a subadult is? There's a subadult right there. So subadult is like a teenager, you know, not quite a... When I first got this bone, I told people, I got 2 subadults at home. So, scientific. Okay. Incidentally, when I go to a museum today and I pay for a ticket, I'm afraid I'm in a different category of age. And so I see youth, adult, and then I say, oh, I'm post-adult. Take a post-adult. Okay. All right, there is the original bone that cast is a copy of. It's in our museum. Come see it. When we first were putting things together in the museum, I prayed something like this. Lord, help us to have something that's a wow thing. Something you don't see every day. Something that people would say, have you seen that? Fill in the blank, over at the museum. And this is what God brought us. It is amazing. 700 pounds. You should have seen it took 5 of us to wrestle that thing into place. You know, it's got some money. There's some value to it, but for some reason I'm not afraid of going to walk off it. Anyway, so it's a pretty cool thing. That is from a full-grown Campmeesaurus. And a Campmeesaurus on a scale of 1 to 10 of the big guys is probably about a 4. So there are many that are larger. But in any case, that's about as big and massive of a bone as you can generally find. So I'm very happy to get this for our museum. Very cool. Very cool. Well, the thing is that when people were finding these bones, they imagined dinosaurs to be nothing more than giant vegetarian, just don't get stepped on kind of things. You know, that was the only scary thing. They were all vegetarian according to their teeth. So they looked like basically big elephants, big elephants. And that was the only image that people had to deal with. For 50 years of dinosaur discoveries, that's what they had. Until they found something that had teeth. And this changed the image of dinosaurs overnight. I've been on the road out in northeastern Wyoming. A guy was driving, I was in the car, and he said, Stan, you see that hill up ahead? Yeah, that's where Osborne found it. The first T-Rex, 1905, Tyrannosaurus Rex, king tyrant lizard, and there is the first one on public display. Now understand the image of dinosaurs changed overnight. From don't get stepped on to don't get eaten. With those great big teeth and everything. That was a significant change in our whole view of dinosaurs. It changed the literature, it changed little silent movies that were being made of suddenly scary, chase you down lion-like dinosaurs. So that was pretty scary. People like to know about dinosaurs, especially T-Rexes. And here's a couple of things about T-Rexes kind of interesting. Number one, we know that he ate Triceratops. How would we know that? Okay, they found a skeleton with the lunch still inside the stomach. And they found bits and pieces of bone that they identified as Triceratops. Now you might say, oh, how would they know that? I've got a Triceratops toe bone in my collection. And if I were to show this to one of those dinosaur nerds, they would look at it and say, okay, this is the middle right toe on the rear foot of a Triceratops. And they'd be right. No, they know that much about bones and everything, understand, the ones that are really into it. Okay, so we found Triceratops like this, but look at this fossil here. This was found not terribly long ago, a year or two ago. This is a Triceratops and a T-Rex together. And what they found on the Triceratops was teeth marks on the bones. On the T-Rex, they found broken rib bones. Now, notice then that these two were in combat with each other just as they were getting covered up in mud and fossilized. Interesting, huh? During the flood, they couldn't stand being in each other's presence without fighting a little bit. So, interesting. This is a T-Rex footprint, and it's in an undisclosed area in New Mexico, under secret. And it is, I think there's a second one they found, they think it's pretty sure is T-Rex. Notice the size of it, 33 inches long, 28 inches wide, and get this, 9 inches deep. Okay, we're talking about a heavy animal. Incidentally, this T-Rex is on display in Hill City, South Dakota, and he's been affectionately named Stan. Now, this T-Rex was found by the Larson brothers, and these are the world-class dinosaur hunters. I was visiting, Anybody know Dr. Art Chadwick? We'll talk about him in a minute. Southwestern Adventist University, head scientist, dinosaur expert. Anyway, he was visiting over here. I was driving him around town. I was his chauffeur. And we went into the Larson Brothers. This is upstairs, okay? This is a display of beautiful world-class fossils next door to where you could buy fossils, okay? But downstairs, they had some of the things that they had packaged and got ready, and some of it was just out, that they were sending to museums all around the world. These are world-class dinosaur hunters. I was able to go downstairs for a while. It was pretty cool. So, anyway, but that's Stan. This is Stan's tooth, okay? Well, this is a museum quality replica of Stan's tooth. If this were a regular T-Rex tooth, with the root and so forth, this would be about $25,000. So, I am a pastor, and that does mean that I've got, as Joe would know, by the end of the month, we don't know what to do with our excess money. We get paid so much. We just sit around and wonder, what could I do with all this? It's a huge problem. So anyway, but still, couldn't afford that, $25,000. So, Stan was the most complete T-Rex ever found for years and years at 40%. 40% was the most complete? Yep. Until they found a dinosaur named Sue. And this T-Rex they found in South Dakota. Larson Brothers were involved with that too. Found on Indian land. There was a fight over who owned Sue. Guess who won? Indians. And they sold it to the Field Museum in Chicago for $8 million plus. And Sue was 90% complete, with a complete skull. Very rare. So there she is in the Field Museum, and you know what? The Field Museum is in America. They charge tickets. And so, if you ever go to Chicago, this is a must-do. It's fabulous. Sue is beautiful. If you're into that sort of thing. Now this is a replica of Sue. It's not the real deal. The real bones are either being studied or the skull is upstairs in a case all by itself. And you can see the skull. But anyway, whenever you see this, unfortunately, you're usually seeing a replica. For a couple of reasons. Number one, the real bones are heavy and brittle and could fall and break or land on a kid or something. So they keep the bones inside laboratories usually to study and put replicas out. They're now sensitive to people not liking that. So sometimes they'll put out when it's a real fossil. This is a real fossil and not a replica. There's a little pushback on this. But probably the coolest thing for T-Rexes is a discovery made in 2005 of a T-Rex bone that was taken back by the collectors, a university group, studied in a laboratory, and they were interested in studying the interior of the bone. They left it in solution that would dissolve the outside, but then they left it in longer than they intended, and they got to the real center of the bone, and guess what happened? You could almost hear it, voices across the country, or a single voice echoing through the country. We have soft tissue here. Here, here, here. What? Soft tissue. What they found were vessels that were flexible still. They found what appeared to be red blood cell stains. All of this cannot possibly be there if they're 65 million years old. What I've just said to you is an undeniable truth. And what has been used by scientists, evolutionists, who've done studies on how long it takes for material to break down. Very interested. How long can DNA last? How long can proteins last? Other soft materials. They've done studies on all of this, way before this happened. And they always come to the conclusion, thousands of years. Thousands, not millions. So we simply quote their studies when we find stuff like this. Why not? Because there's no other explanation. Now the woman who was in charge of this, what's her name? Mary, anyway, she was interviewed by 60 Minutes and all this. It's a big deal to find soft tissue in the dinosaur bone. Katie Couric was asking her on 60 Minutes. Now, tell us about this. Was sensational that you found all this in there. Now, we know that those creationists who want to say that the world isn't really old like we know it to be, but, you know, stuff like that. So, oh, brother, I had to watch that. But anyway, Mary basically got clobbered by the scientific community for doing shoddy work. How dare you present soft material as though it were in a dinosaur bone? You know that's not possible. You've done some kind of horrible job of researching this. Do you realize what this is going to be used by, you know, by creation and so forth? So it's just terrible. So she listened carefully to the critiques, and actually there's one or two points that they made that she thought, you know, maybe I better look at it again. So she looked at it again and did her research over much more carefully, especially with those critiques, came to the same conclusion. Now, when she presented it again the second time, there was a little more openness, and it's been accepted a little bit more. She's made this comment, and this is good science. She said this: either things can be preserved better than any way we remotely have an idea on, or these bones are not as old as we think. And that's good science to say it that way. That's a good statement. So, now, if I were doing another lecture about the age of the earth, I'd show you another slide right now that would show you all the different things they've been finding in dinosaur bones and other fossils that now they suddenly say, hey, wait a minute. We've never looked for soft stuff before. We never looked for proteins or DNA or anything because we know this stuff's too old. It won't be there. Let's look. So they're finding now, about every 2 or 3 months, there's a new discovery. The list is about 30 now or so of proteins and other things that they're finding in fossils that should not be there. The point is, it's opened the door to it. And it's very interesting to find out where it's going to go. Okay, moving on to another subject involving dinosaurs, and that's tootsies. Footprints. Did you know dinosaurs had tootsies? Footprints are fossil evidence. There is a place in Texas, Paluxy River, where if you go there, and it's central Texas, it's beautiful this time of year. 110 in the shade. But anyway, if you go there, that's why this is a good park. It's got water. There's a Paluxy River State Park, and it's got a creek running through the park, and kids are splashing in it, and there are dinosaur footprints all over the park. Real dinosaur footprints, not Disney made. These are made, genuinely real. All over the park. Now, I don't know of any other place like this. This is the place where supposedly there are human footprints next to dinosaur footprints. Have you heard of this before? Okay, you have. Interesting. The first person to promote this among churches in America, back in the, I'm going to say 30s or so, 1930s maybe, is, hey, we've got dinosaur footprints with human footprints, was a Seventh-day Adventist named Burdick. So it's made its way around Adventist churches. Now, this has been studied very carefully by creation-oriented scientists who believe that dinosaurs and humans were on the earth at the same time. But are these human footprints? The overwhelming conclusion of different sources is no, they're dinosaur footprints that the water has changed or done something with. Incidentally, you see the picture right there, a man is walking there to give you scale. But if you believe that humans were a different size, as in larger, before the flood, this wouldn't work for you. Okay, so the thing is, it's typical like this. You see several that look kind of human, but you keep on going then, oh no, that looks a little more dinosaur. You know what I mean? In the long trail. I'm personally skeptical on it. I don't think humans wanted to live in the same area, same zip code as dinosaurs. So I don't think they would be running along on the same mud together. That's just me. And I'll give you some other things about this later. So I'm obvious a skeptic, along with many others, about this. Now, could be they find something that looks very reasonable. Incidentally, this is from an area where it is a known practice by the locals to grind footprints into the stone and sell them to tourists. Now they found some that have compression underneath them and what looks like perfect human footprints. But the thing is that those were dinosaur footprints that were ground into human footprints. So they do have the compression, the squishing of the sand below as weight. Do you understand what I'm saying? So I'm personally in that category. There's probably in every Adventist church I've been in, there's usually somebody who's a believer in this. And I understand that. I respect it. And you want to talk to me later? Yeah. So, you see water changes dinosaur footprints. There's a place in Utah where they just recently found some more dinosaur footprints. You see the water can change the shape. So that's kind of where I am there on that. Now, take a look at this picture. And this is a hadrosaur. It used to be whenever we were digging up dinosaur bones, they just want to get the bones out of the ground. Rip, rip, dig, dig, rip, rip. Get them out of there. Now they're a little more careful because they know that when a dinosaur got covered up in mud and died, the body eventually would deteriorate. But the skin might still have an impression in the mud that it's now become rock. So they pop that rock out just a little more carefully now, and sometimes they see the shape of the skin. And that piece on the left I have up here, and that's clearly, and that's from a hadrosaur, that's clearly reptilian scales. People sometimes wonder, were the dinosaurs really reptiles? Well, they had scales. So that's kind of an interesting support for that idea. Okay, and eggs. What about eggs? Now, dinosaur eggs have been found all around the world, especially Mongolia, China, France, Argentina, and America, Montana, places like that, have found dinosaur eggs. Okay. When I was a kid, I imagined dinosaur eggs to be roughly the size of a Volkswagen Beetle. Well, they're not. They are the size of cantaloupes and ostrich eggs. This is a typical dinosaur egg. This is from China, and this is the standard size. You don't get any bigger than this. Raptor eggs are a little bit longer like this and a little narrower, but they're not really bigger in terms of size. So that means that all dinosaurs, including the very biggest ones, were pretty small when they started out. Cute like that. Okay, cute to its mother. Anyway. So, that's interesting. Incidentally, why would dinosaur nests be a problem for a flood picture of a flood or support for a flood? Why would a dinosaur egg nest be a problem?
Because the flood would have set them apart.
Pardon me?
The flood would have scattered them around.
Well, the water, there's that, of course. But if water's coming up, then how can there be time on the layers? Because there's layers, and then dinosaurs are up on the middle layers. How can there be a layer that with enough time for there to be a nest and so forth there, and, eggs laid and everything? It seems like that would require some time between the layers to make a nest. Does that make sense? What they found out, though, is that they've studied this, and creationists have looked at it a little differently. Are we sure they're nests? And there's something like 100 and some odd sites in the world. These have all been actually categorized down to just 5 that look more like nests, and the other 100 or so look like they're places where eggs floated into a depression. You know what I mean? So they were actually moved by water and fell into a hole, got covered up by mud. So that's kind of interesting. Anyway, there's very few eggs that have dinosaur bones in them, and that's actually makes sense if this is a flood scenario and there's no time, shall we say, for fertilization and so forth. Anyway, okay, take a look at this. This is going to give you an indication of what you're going to be doing next June. So if you want to take notes, I understand that. I'll wait while you get out pen and paper. You are going to be digging dinosaur bones. How cool is that? Up there, don't you want to do that? Yeah. You can be a volunteer at a dinosaur dig and you will find bones. You can't keep them. But anyway, you will find bones. This is the Southwestern Adventist University's run Dino Dig every June in northeastern Wyoming. This last June we took a group of 6 school teachers from NPUC and took them, and they had a good time. I don't have pictures. I should show you pictures of that group. But anyway, we had a lot of fun. This is something that is open to any volunteer who wants to go anywhere from 1 day to 30 days. You pay a small fee for a campsite and the food. Very minimal. Okay, are we going to sign up people tonight? Anyway, Southwest Adventist University. Go to their website, Dino Dig. You can find a way of getting in there. So, take a look. This is the most forsaken place on earth. Well, it's just out there. It's out there. There are no people. It's quite literally the least inhabited county of the least inhabited of the 48 states. So, anyway, near South Dakota. This is Dr. Art Chadwick, head of science. He's retired now, Southwestern. And this is a typical morning. We gather around after breakfast. He has a worship thought, or one of his associates then says what each group's going to do today, and off we go and we do digs in different sources. There I am, uncovering a rib bone of a hadrosaur. A hadrosaur is a giraffe-sized dinosaur, 2-legged dinosaur. And I'm digging out the rib bones about like this. Now, you can see that little squeegee bottle of, basically, it's very much like a super glue. You squeeze it into the bone, it just goes right into the bone, makes it very hard, easy to transport. So, we'll take them out eventually, we'll wrap them up, but before they're actually removed, somebody will come along with one of these GPS locators. They've got a triangulated station there, and they send out a signal that will record the position of a bone that they put it on the corner of to a fraction of an inch. And record its position, take several readings, take a picture of that bone later, and scale it to size and drop it in a software package like that. Now that has the effect of removing the dirt and looking down on the bone field as though they're just each one floating. Is that amazing or what? That's cutting edge technology right there. Cutting edge. And take a look. That is the bone field that we're talking about there on this ranch, this Christian ranch. It's not Adventist owned, but it's Christian owned. They've had it for 100 years. They want the bones to be studied by creation scientists. So Southwestern is doing that for them. Anyway, take a look at that. Tell me what you see in that bone field. Incidentally, you can turn that sideways. 3D. It's 3D. It's very cool. You can see how they're laid out, top to bottom too. It's about an 18 to 24-inch layer, and that's the only place where bones are. World-class dinosaur bone deposit. What do you see in it? What do you not see?
18, 24-inch.
Yes. Yes.
So that means what you've got, all the dinosaurs.
These are almost all pieces of hadrosaurs. Almost all. There's a few alligator, there's a few, there might be a bit of a T-Rex or Triceratops in there. They're in that area too. Take a look. What do you not see here? You don't see a skull. Skulls are always the first to go. Skulls are very difficult to preserve. Very thin bone. What else do you not see? No, I'm looking for it. I'm not looking for ribs, tails.
Vertebrae?
Vertebrae, okay. Do you see skeletons? Nothing's connected. We don't have the hip bone to the leg bone to the knee bone thing going on here, do we? So whatever happened to make this field of bones? Now I asked Dr. Chadwick, and there's more. You can kind of see out a little bit over canyons. You can see other places where that same layer of dirt is. I've asked him, have you surveyed over there? Yeah. How about over here? We've done the whole area. Is the bone density similar? Yes, it is. Whoa! Have you done any number crunching of what we're looking at? Yes. He thinks we're looking at 10,000 hadrosaurs. Giraffe-sized dinosaurs. 10,000. Now, If you look at the bones themselves, there's two things you notice. Number one, they haven't been in air very long. In other words, when the animals died, their bones were not exposed long in the air, because you can tell what that does to the surface. Number two, the edges of the bones apparently have a little bit of wear on them, like they were rolled. Like they were rolled. Okay, I'm going to be a little gross here to explain what happened to this huge herd of dinosaurs. But what must have happened was this. Whatever killed them, must have involved water, rolled their bodies for literally miles. Rolled them and rolled them to the point where the bodies started to come apart. The skulls were broken, fragmented, and eventually this pile of bones, huge pile, washed into this basin here and got covered up in mud and preserved. Now you tell me, what does that sound like to you? It's the flood. This is great evidence to position ourselves as believers in the flood. So, pretty interesting. Pretty interesting. And you could do this next June. We think we're taking another group too. Does the Bible tell us anything about dinosaurs? Now remember, the word is only from the mid-1800s, a fairly new word. Now there's two places that are interesting. Number one, when God created great sea creatures, the word on day 5 of creation is Tananim. Tananim, usually for the rest of the Old Testament, is talking about some kind of a reptile. So did God create great sea reptiles? We'll leave that for you to decide, but this one's more interesting. I love Job. I told you already, Job 38 to the end of the book is the longest section of God speaking nonstop. Right there, it's begging to be read. But he's talking mostly about creation, and can I put it in these terms? Almost bragging about the cool things he's made. Have you seen this? Did you see this? It's really cool. I like to see God talking about his creation that way. But now, he talks about two animals that are very interesting. First of all, Leviathan. Heard of Leviathan? Okay, more than a chapter about Leviathan. Leviathan is talked about as an animal that has skin that can't be penetrated easily by sword or arrow, and then he makes the water boil. Now scholars, Bible scholars, have looked at that, and they put in little tiny letters at the bottom of your Bible page. Scholars think that the Leviathan was a what? Nile crocodile. And actually I think that's probably pretty good, because when a crocodile gets something in its mouth, it will spin with it. And when it's spinning, it's making the water boil. Looks like that. So I kind of think that's not a terrible, terrible way. I'm open, but let's go with that for now. But when they come to behemoth, this is interesting. And the word behemoth in Hebrew simply means beast. So no help there. So let's take a look. And God is bragging about behemoth. Let's see. Look now at behemoth, Job, which I made along with you. What does that mean? 6th day of creation, land animal. He eats grass like an ox. Vegetarian. Okay. Okay. See now, his strength is in his hips. His power is in his stomach muscles. He moves his tail like a cedar. His bones are like beams of bronze. His ribs like bars of iron. You're getting this sense of a powerful animal, especially in the middle. Powerful animal. He is the first of the ways of God. And I said, well, what does that mean? First of the ways of God. Does that mean the first animal chronologically he made? I don't think so. I've studied this, and I think I can come to a conclusion that other people have, and that is, God is saying, this is the alpha animal. This is the king of the beasts. This is the top of the pyramid. This is the animal that wins, comes in first place, most amazing animal. Okay? So I'm getting all excited about this now. I'm pumping myself up for a fabulous scholarly answer as to what this animal was. And I look at that tiny print at the bottom, and it says, scholars think a behemoth was a hippopotamus. Hippopotamus? Does that strike you with majesty and power and everything else? What kind of tail does a hippopotamus have? What it says, he moves his tail. It's literally, he sways his tail like a cedar. Have you seen a hippopotamus tail? And second choice is an elephant. So, I mean, You don't think, it doesn't evoke images of a giant cedar tree. Might this be the animal? And here we will go with, that is the south end of a hippopotamus. There is Job for scale. And might God be thinking more along this line? With a powerful animal that would be the most amazing of all, the most alpha, the most powerful animal, and also with a tail that would remind you of a cedar tree. Other people come to that conclusion. I don't know if it's a hill worth dying on, but I don't like hippopotamus. And incidentally, this would be a legendary animal, of course, to Job. All right, now, here is a trivia question for you. What does the word evolution mean again? Its basic word. Change. Thank you. Some people say evolve. Don't give me the verb form. Change. Now, here's my question. Do creationists believe any of the animals changed? Oh. Did that animal look like that when it was talking to Eve? I don't think so. I don't think Eve said, oh look, there's a snake. I think I'll go. I don't think so. I think whatever it was, and there's a strong Jewish tradition that it was a flying animal. And of course, Spirit Prophecy says that too. An animal in the tree, it was a flying animal. It was a beautiful animal. And it was therefore able to be used by the devil to trick Eve. Now, here's my question for you. After he did trick Eve, God had something to say to that animal. And he said, okay, before we look at it, I want you to unscrew all your heads for just a minute because you are Greeks. There's nothing you can do about that. You are born Greeks and you are Greeks. It's a condition that you have to deal with, I understand. So you think like a Greek. I want you to screw off this head and put on a Hebrew head for a minute and think like a Hebrew, and I'll wait while you do that. Because the following concept is understandable totally different by a Hebrew than you and me, okay? And that is the concept of curses. Because when you curse somebody today, not that you ever do, but if you should ever be tempted to curse somebody, they probably just cut you off in traffic. Okay? And you have something to say about that. If you bless somebody, you are wishing that they have a nice day. Bless you for that. That is so nice. But to a Hebrew, cursing and blessing was serious stuff. It was tangible. It made something better or worse than the way it was. Jesus understood this when he told his disciples, when you go to a town and you go to stay with somebody's house, let your peace be on that house. Now, if they prove to be unworthy, in other words, you have problems there, they don't want you to stay anymore, then you take that peace back. Okay? In other words, that's a Hebrew. You brought a Hebrew blessing on there. If they're not worthy, remove it. Don't let that blessing stay on them. So their thinking was, if something was blessed, it was tangibly improved. It was now better than what it was. If a woman was in childbearing age and she was blessed, that possibly meant more children or more able to have children. It was a tangible difference. Cursing took it the other way. And now this animal is going to be less of an animal than what it was before. Are you with me? It's now tangibly affected. You can put your Greek heads back on. Here we go. So you are cursed more, God says to this animal. That means you are no longer going to be beautiful. You're no longer going to be flying. You're no longer going to have a form that can tempt Eve. You are going to be dropped down several steps to a lower form animal than what you were. And in this case, the description is there. You're going to be on your belly and you shall eat dust. In other words, you're going to be what it is now. So, but notice this. On your belly you shall go, but you are cursed more than all cattle. Now that means, and the word cattle there we understand means animals. That means now you are going to be affected by sin the most, but other animals also are going to be affected by sin that's now entered the world. And now all the animal kingdom is going to show effects of becoming less than what they were. You with me? Hey, guess what? we're less than what we were created to be too. Anybody notice lately? So anyway, we are not what Adam and Eve looked like, not even close. So sin has affected the world and made everything less than what it was. Now, take a look. I'm going to show you now a couple of dinosaurs that will show you what was the problem. I showed this to you last night, didn't I? This is what triggered the flood. Corruption. The earth also was corrupt before God. The earth was filled with violence. So God looked upon the earth. Indeed, it was corrupt. That means decay. That means cursed. For all flesh had corrupted their way on the earth. And God said to Noah, the end of all flesh has come before me. For the earth is filled with violence through them. Somehow or other, animals started to look at each other as food. Take a look at this critter right here. This is an ankylosaurus. Now, tell me what you think. Does this animal look like it's ready for the Garden of Eden? It's got spikes on its back. It's got a club for a tail. It's got a armor head. It looks like it's ready for combat. In fact, I can't imagine a better design for combat than what this thing is. It's a tank on 4 legs. Take a look at a Stegosaurus. Stegosaurus has very bony plates, no doubt for protection on its back. It's got spikes in its tail that it could whip around like a weapon. Take a look at Pachycephalosaurus, which is basically bonehead. And look at this very thick skull could run into animals. And take a look at this guy right here that was found recently in Canada. Look at the top half has been perfectly preserved. And you look at that thing and you say, I don't know about Garden of Eden. It looks like some of the dinosaurs are combat-oriented dinosaurs. Now, I'm going to run with this a little bit. I want you to follow this here. Because, and incidentally, it doesn't mean just because they got sharp teeth. Can sharp teeth always mean it's a meat eater? Incidentally, to an evolutionist, yes, always. Canine, sharp canines, like this guy. Oh, he's smiling. Take a look. These sharp canine teeth means to an evolutionist that this is a meat eater. Incidentally, that's a panda. Now, when you show that, what's a panda eat? Bamboo. Does it eat anything else? Strictly bamboo. So, take a look. When you ask an evolutionist, why does a panda bear have sharp teeth like that? They say, okay, it used to be a predator. It used to eat meat. Can you see a panda trying to chase something down? Anyway, so the point is the model is this, and the model is the model. Canine teeth mean meat. Now, grizzly bear is the omnivore. It can eat anything. Whatever's handy. If fish are handy, it'll eat it. But if fish are not handy, it will not need meat. It will eat other things. So anyway, the point, you'll never see bigger canines than on a grizzly. So the point is, sharp teeth don't necessarily mean that. And there's some sharp teeth that are brought from Spinosaurus. Take a look at this. But these are vegetarian teeth from other dinosaurs. Okay. I think because this is an Adventist group, I'm going to show slides at the end where I'm going to finish my combat and amalgamation. Thanks, we'll talk about it at the end of this, okay? So let me just finish up with a couple of other ideas about dinosaurs. Dinosaur, for evolutionists, they feel that it's an absolutely slam dunk. Please don't tell me you don't believe in this, Stan. It's that kind of thing, of dinosaur to bird evolution. They feel like that's a slam dunk. Okay, they've got 2 theories about how that might have happened. Number 1 is large ground bipeds. Now, this is a large ground biped. So the thought is that this would become a bird someday. You tell me what's wrong with that idea. I was waiting for somebody to say what's right with that idea. But anyway, first of all, the back end of this, there's a whole lot. They got to get rid of this tail. There's a lot of weight there. The whole carriage is kind of heavy. These little tiny front arms have got to become very big. Wings. There's a lot of things wrong with this, but they understand that that's supposedly what happened. Now they know that's a problem. Among other things, got to change those things. But so they have a secondary theory that's called small crocodiles from the trees. That's the birds they use. small crocodile. The crocodile went up a tree, saw some food out there, jumped out and got it, was successful, made babies, and so forth. Then, somewhere down the line, it jumped out further, and as it kept jumping out further, somehow it had babies, and one of the babies had flaps, or something on the way to flaps. It could sail a little bit further, get more food, be more successful, have more babies, and on we go to the day that, hey, one of the babies had wings. And so, are there any questions? Yeah, no, that's it. You don't get that? Skin folds had to become wings. Lungs. And lungs are a real problem there. This is just one of many. But for instance, lungs. Lungs on a lizard are very slow. Very slow. Whereas a bird, when it's flapping its wings, it's breathing every time. That's what they're doing. It's very hard to go from one... Yeah, okay, you got the idea. So, these are the bumps on a reptile that has particularly bumpy scales. Those bumps somehow became follicles that became feathers. So the bumps on the outside of the skin became a follicle that was growing out from underneath the skin and became a feather. Again, any questions? When did the blood change? From what? Well, it must have changed because there they are. We have birds. Seriously, evolution had to happen because here we are. Okay.
Faster?
Yeah, go ahead.
And were the reptiles cold-blooded?
They're cold-blooded. Most reptiles, reptiles today are cold-blooded. There's been some articulation as whether the large ones could have existed as cold-blooded because they were so large. It's hard to imagine. And there's been several theories about they had maybe somewhere in between, sort of a cold, warm, sort of, try to adapt to that. Unclear. Birds are warm. Well, it's just one of the things that evolved. I'm just trying to... Sorry. Okay, so whenever you go to Kentucky Fried Chicken, you're going to Kentucky Fried Dinosaurs, and you're really asking, give me a bucket of hadrosaurs, extra crispy, or something like that. Okay, anyway. But here's something that's kind of cool. Watch this. Now this is interesting. This is the standard view with many ears. Feathered birds go all the way down. The lowest one they found is in the Jurassic layer, right there, in Germany, the Archaeopteryx. If you've ever heard of Archaeopteryx, the ancient winged bird that looks sort of lizardy and birdy. But it's a bird. Anyway, that's the lowest one. Okay, let's go over to dinosaurs. They have two kinds. They've got flying dinosaurs. Pterodactyls, you've heard of flying dinosaurs? Those did not become birds. They just died off. It's the walking dinosaurs, and incidentally, the walking dinosaurs, 2 legs, have 2 kinds of hips, bird hips and lizard hips. Sounds funny, lizard hips. But anyway, so bird hips and lizard hips, their structure either look like other reptiles or birds. Which do you think of those 2 became birds? Lizard hips. Okay, whatever. And anyway, so flying dinosaurs go down lower, that's good. But we got land dinosaurs that go down. Okay, so here's the potential. One of these guys could have had babies that ended up going over here and becoming birds. So that's good that this is low like this, right? For the potential of being evolution here. Okay, here's the problem. They found bird footprints that are down here at the same layer of Triassic. That's not helpful. Let me tell you what that was. This is a discovery found in Argentina by an Argentinian scientist who's an evolutionist. Found bird footprints, and no doubt about it, Triassic level. They would love it to be some other level. It is Triassic level. That makes it very old, according to evolution. And it's bird footprints. And it's not lizard footprints, it's birds, because it's got the backward toe, it's got the helix there. and it's hopping all around. And this bird is hopping on mud. Hop, 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 hop on mud. More mud came in after the bird left, covered it up, and preserved those footprints. That's how we get bird footprints, whether you believe in millions of years or not. That's how you get bird footprints or any footprints. Now, here's the thing. This is what the scientists said. It's significant because we find footprints with morphology that's shaped identical to modern birds and rocks that predate by 55 million years the first record of true aves as birds. So what does he say? He said, it's significant. It's significant that we found this. It's important because it's too old by 55 million years to be real bird footprints. Those sure look like bird footprints.
Pastor?
Do you understand what they're saying here?
Pastor?
Yes.
I saw an article where the Chinese claim to have fossils of dinosaurs that have feathers. Is that something made up by them?
No, and there is some, that's an interesting area. There are some dinosaurs that look like they have what we would call proto-feathers, and that would be stringy things. What they now are surmising, this has been looked at very carefully by scientists, including creation scientists, what they're now thinking is it may well be stuff, I don't want to get gross here, but when the body dies, it gets covered up, sometimes stuff oozes out and radiates out, and they're actually, and there is a technical term for this, that some of the things they think that look like feathers are actually, I don't know, guts, whatever you want to call it, of the bird, stuff that's from the body, but not feathers. They haven't found bird feathers with the center column and, and all of that. They haven't found anything like that. But they have found things that are stringy and then look like kind of, what kind of bird has stringy feathers like that? Like an emu or something? Or I'm trying to think of something of an animal that, anyway. Okay, so, but anyway, this is kind of funny because it relates to our dating of the earth. So, Ricardo said this is a problem. Footprints step back bird origin. So, he's really asking the question, so do we make birds older? Incidentally, they never found any bones of this thing. And so, here's what I think happened. You tell me if this makes any sense. A bird is flying. It's rain. It's the flood. It's going on. It's running out of gas. It's running down. Oh, there's a place, and lands on some mud. Hop, 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 hop. Oh, here comes the water. I can't stay here long. And off it flies. And eventually, the birds get caught up much higher in the fossil record. Does that make sense? Because it simply was able to outrun the water for a while. To me, that makes way better sense than what's this 55 million year too old rock here. So, makes sense. Dinosaur evolution, supposedly, there's 10 types of dinosaurs. These are the number of things found, remains found of these. And I'm just for the fun of it going to put a bird in there because I'm going to show you how open-minded I am about birds possibly being another kind of dinosaur. Now, and there's supposedly this ancient Triassic grandpa of dinosaurs. Now, we've dug under these guys. We've got lots of fossils of things underneath these guys. Let's see if we've ever found any ancestors. Well, no, we haven't found any ancestors. And if you think I'm kidding, because when you think of dinosaurs, surely there's evolution. Okay, here's a dinosaur expert who's an evolutionist. Says, from my reading of the fossil record of dinosaurs, no direct ancestors have been discovered for any species. Alas, my record is an empty one, a dinosaur ancestor. So, we've been told dinosaurs, evolution, there it is. Not really. So what we have is dinosaurs, like all other fossil animals, are either there or they aren't. They show up and then they're gone. Right? There's no pre-dinosaur, there's not post-dinosaurs, there's dinosaurs. Okay, so let's keep going. So what happened to dinosaurs? What started the flood? You remember last night I hinted that maybe asteroids, maybe meteors were involved with them. How big did dinosaurs get? Some of them got to be 130 feet long, which is longer than this to the outside of the church. That would be pretty significant, wouldn't it? But guess guess what the average size of a dinosaur is? The size of a large dog. In fact, they get as small as chickens. They just found some. They found a new one that's the size of a turkey. I'm waiting for the name to be announced. Turkeyosaurus or something. But anyway, so here's a question I have for you. If they got that small, then what is the physiological or the body shape difference between a regular lizard and a dinosaur? I've already given you the hint. It's not size. So what is the structural difference between a regular lizard and a dinosaur? Let's see if there's anybody here who can fire off a correct answer. Anyone here wants to risk an answer they're not sure of? It's not what they eat. No one else? It's in the hips. It's in the hips because lizards have hips that put the legs straight out. And so a lizard does this to get around. Whereas a dinosaur has hips that put the legs straight down. Whether it's 4 or 2, they put the legs straight down to get the body off the ground. And that, folks, is the difference. Not size. We don't have any current ones. Komodo dragons, everybody else, they have, it's true that from their knees on, they go down. But from the hips, no. The hips don't put the legs under the bodies. So, no dinosaurs today. Now, here's an intriguing question for anybody who loves the Bible like you and I do. Did dinosaurs sneak onto the ark? Now, this is a loaded question because in Seventh-day Adventist circles, and as well as some other conservative churches, but certainly Seventh-day Adventist circles, we have not been very good about talking about dinosaurs. I've had 2 people in the Union Conference office come and tell me, Stan, when I was in school, we were not to talk about dinosaurs. Any of you here have similar recollections? We didn't know what to do with them. Now, some of this was based on some quotes by Ellen White. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. But I'd like to suggest to you to think about something for a minute. Let's assume for a moment, for just the sake of argument, that some did get on. And some became the source of legends, which we call dragon stories. We have dragon stories, and remember what the word dragon means. Not fire-breathing red. It means lizard, big lizard. Some of the stories from China to England all seem to have a couple of things going that are similar. Number 1, it's usually talking about one. One is in a cave, one is near a town, one. And they're not always the size of houses, they could be the size of horses. So they're not necessarily giant, but there's always like one. It becomes a problem for the local population for whatever reason. Munching on cattle, munching on people, does something. It's a problem, and so they send either a knight or a mob or whatever, and they go dispatch this thing, and it's the last one. There's never herds. There's always one, and then it's gone. They're all gone. I find that very interesting, and wherever you go, dragon stories typically have those kind of things going, including, and there are some cases of flying ones, but anyway, here's the thing. Could it be that there's a kernel in each one of these of a day when people remember the very last human encounters with these big lizards? Now, is that pre-flood or post-flood? I think it fits better in post-flood. Now, but it's not a hill worth dying on. You have a question? Or you just read some more? Okay. So, now, hang on to some of these thoughts as I'm going to take a look at some quotes. But here's the final thing I want you to look at as far as the basic talk. I'm going to put a scary modern dragon head on this T-Rex, and I got you to think about it for a minute, and remember this text we started with, so the great dragon was cast out, who deceives. Now, Revelation 12 is in front of Revelation 13. And Revelation 13 is just in front of Revelation 14. So, Revelation 12, 13, and 14 are all going into last day stuff. Last day events. And here we have a dragon on the loose, interested in deceiving the world. And what is he interested in deceiving the world? Remember my talk this morning. What is he interested in deceiving the world to think? How about that this world was not created by a loving God, that nature is all there is that's out there, and we are all a planet of mutants walking around with no purpose, all as biological accidents in a long stream of other biological accidents. Maybe he would like us to think that and not seek the Creator God who loves us and made us in His image. Wouldn't he like to divert us from that path? And what image would he like to use this with 1,000 words in it? A picture. How about a dinosaur? Because when we see dinosaur, don't people knee-jerk reaction to a dinosaur picture is like, oh yeah, dinosaurs, millions of years, not Genesis. Am I not right about that? I think the image is a powerful image that refutes the Genesis account the way the devil has been using it. So I'm going to put another word that means dragon, same thing, big reptile, put it right in there. Great dinosaur was cast out, that servant of old, called the devil and Satan, who deceives the world. So let's not let the image of dinosaur deceive us into thinking anything other than Genesis is being historically accurate and a trustworthy part of God. I like Jesus' image, his view of inspiration. You know what he said to the devil when he's being tested? Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from Middle East camel herders, which Richard Dawkins says the writers of the Bible were. By the mouth of God. Every word comes from the mouth of God. And then what does Jesus do right after that? To the other temptations, quotes books of Moses. So the books of Moses, according to Jesus, have words that came from the mouth of God. That's a pretty good view of inspiration. I think I'll stick to that until I have a reason not to have Jesus' view. Okay, so having said that, I'm now going to show you a couple of famous quotes that has caused some Adventists to not want to look at dinosaurs. Okay, here we go. Take a look. Is that for me? But if there is one sin above another which called for the destruction of the race by the flood, it was the base crime of amalgamation of man and beast, which defaced the image of God and caused confusion everywhere. Now, take a look at that. It was changed a little bit for patriarchs and prophets. So, when you look at that, amalgamation, what is that word? That's a 19th century word that means mixing things together. So, somehow or other, mixing things together happened with man, it happened with beast, and that caused God to bring the flood. Now, if there's a sin above any other, so I'm thinking, oh, wait a minute, then that's going to be in the Bible. If it's a sin that causes God to send the flood, it's going to be in the Bible. So I go to the Bible, and this is what I read. Genesis 6. The sons of God looked upon the daughters of men, that they were fair, and married them. The next quote from God. If I could summarize it. I'm done. 120 years for man. That's it. It's a triggering event for God. What is the mixing of the sons of God with the daughters of man? Who are the sons of God? Don't say angels. Sons of God are the sons of of Adam through Seth, the godly line. The daughters of men, the daughters of Cain. These are the worldly line. These are the ones that were idolaters. And you can see other Ellen White quotes opening up this view. So, the men that were godly were marrying out of the church, and there was no one left for God to speak to. No one else that would pick up the phone when God was calling. And he was done. So that was the mixing of man. But Ellen White talks about the mixing of animals. Now, here's the thing. Some people think that's a mixing the man with beast. And a quick read might make you think that. The Ellen White estate has strongly denied that. She's not talking about man with beast. She's talking about man with man and beast with beast. The man one did deface the image of God. The beast one caused confusion. If you think I'm kidding, take a look at this. every species of animal which God had created were preserved in the ark. How many? Every. The confused species which God did not create. Confused species. Remember, caused confusion everywhere? Confused species which God did not create, which were the result of amalgamation, were destroyed in the flood. Now, I'm thinking, okay, what animals were the result of amalgamation? Adventists have sometimes said, when I say Adventists, I'm talking about people in the church, have sometimes said, it's not an official decree, maybe all the animals that we call dinosaurs were mixed. And therefore, no dinosaurs were on the flood, in the ark, on the flood. Take a look at this ankylosaur, and I'm thinking now, if man was involved with breeding animals, and he was only violent, and thinking of violent thoughts, continually evil thoughts, and into violence, and knew what he was doing with genetics, maybe he would say, hey, what kind of pit bulls can, pardon me if there's pit bull lovers here, what kind of pit bulls can I make these dinosaurs into? What can I make for warfare? What can I make for sport and hunting? What can I make for the arena, for entertainment? And breed some dinosaurs. This is a vast minority of kinds of dinosaurs that look like they're ready for a fight. Are you with me on this? So I'm thinking maybe some of these guys, and we don't have the ones originally made in Garden of Eden, we only have the ones destroyed in the flood, of course. So I'm thinking that maybe some of these are the characters in which she is talking about that were the result of amalgamation and did not get, repeat, did not get on the ark. But she seems to say that others did. Yes?
How about the old parts where they said that they...
Hang on with that. Hang on with that. That's a good question. I'm going to do that at each of the year when we open it up to general questions. Let's stick to dinosaurs for just a little longer and we'll finish. Okay, good question. So, result of amalgamation were destroyed in the flood. Now look at this quote, and this is the last, well, almost. There were a class of what kind of animals? Very large animals which perished at the flood. God knew that the strength of these animals, the strength of man would decrease, and these mammoth animals could not be controlled by feeble man. Now does she say they're destroyed because they're amalgamated? No, she says they're destroyed because they're too big. I'm thinking it's these guys. And I don't think these got on the ark because they're too big. And we believe that man would be getting smaller, weaker, shorter lives and so forth, and not able to deal with these big guys as he might have been able to do before the flood. Incidentally, what would these be doing before the flood? Because we think the atmosphere before the flood was so powerfully good for plants, you could practically watch plants grow. We think that maybe God needed giant hedge trimmers. And frankly, after the flood, there'd be quite a while before vegetation could support that kind of an animal. So, anyway, now does this make sense? So the biggest animals and the confused animals, and my theory here is the ones that were bred for combat and so forth, neither of those two categories got on the ark. But the medium to smaller size, remember when she says mammoth animals, she's talking about giant animals. We know they had to be larger than elephants because we got elephants. So it's ones that were larger than elephants did not get on here. So elephant size and smaller might have got on the ark. Having said all that, now I'll answer questions. And let's stick first of all to dinosaurs and then we'll go to general thing.